thought in Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That is Nick Wright. This is Greg Jennings joining us this morning. It is cold here in New York City.
Good to see you.
What stuff? It's like
well,
he
lives in Minneapolis.
And also you played, right? In Green Bay.
Minneapolis and Green Bay.
You know what 20s is. It's not quite.
It's gorgeous outside America.
It is gorgeous if you were bundled up. Nanuka the North. All right. Let's start the show. Hey, leave it to Jerry Jones to interrupt all the NFL playoff previews with a preview of what's to come in Dallas. That's where we kick things off this morning. Mike McCarthy introduced as the 9th head coach of the Dallas Cowboys yesterday. It's a nice smile from him. The last time McCarthy was on the big stage in Arlington, Texas, he was hoisting a Lombardi trophy for the Packers. I was there covering that. Now McCarthy taking over for a Cowboys team that hasn't won a Super Bowl in 25 years. So there is no doubt that when it comes to coaching in Dallas, for a guy like Jerry Jones, the expectations are high.
I'm just going to say this and to the fans, and, you know, the commitment will be unwavering, but I won my first Super Bowl here in North Texas at AT&T Stadium. And I just want to tell you, I am anxious and excited to get to work on winning the next Super Bowl for the Dallas Cowboys.
I like it. Expectations are high for Mike McCarthy. Nick, you expect McCarthy's Cowboys to be Super Bowl contenders next season with the roster that you saw him have this season?
No, I don't. They won't have the same roster next season because they're going to pay Dak and they're going to have to pare away at least some pieces of that roster. The Cowboys are wildly popular. They're polarizing. They're at times controversial. What they are not or have not been the last quarter century is contenders. Twice since they won a Super Bowl in '94, they have been legitimate Super Bowl contenders. 2007, the year after Bill Parcells left, first year with Wade Phillips, they were 13-3, only to be upset at home in their very first playoff game by Eli Manning and the New York Giants. And then 2014, another game Mike McCarthy's intimately familiar with, or another season he's familiar with, the final game of the year, when they were 12-4, actually won a first-round playoff game, and then Dez caught it, Dez didn't catch it, and that ended their year there. Some would argue I should include 2016 in that list because they were 13-3, but a rookie quarterback was not going to go and win that Super Bowl. There were 2 years they have been true contenders, 07 and 14, and I do not think they are, even with the upgraded coaching, built the way in 2020 now a Super Bowl contender needs to be built. And by that I mean this. Of your guys under contract for 2020, 4 of your biggest cap hits are offensive linemen. You're trying to build a big, bruising football team, and one of your other biggest cap hits is your running back. That is against the grain for the way football is played these days. And you've got to be efficient with your roster spending. And I look at DeMarcus Lawrence, and I say, is he worth the money they're paying him? He wasn't this year. I don't think he would be next year. I look at Zeke, highest paid running back in the NFL. This year, probably about the 5th best running back in the NFL. And I look at the contract they are going to give Dak Prescott, and Mike McCarthy already was speaking glowingly about Dak Prescott, and I say, you're going to be paying the 10th or 11th or 12th best quarterback in football, top 3 quarterback money. To overcome that type of misspending, you have to have so much underpaid talent. I don't see that on the Cowboys roster. I also see an NFC where San Francisco's not going anywhere, Seattle's not going anywhere, Minnesota seems to be on the come rather than fading, and Green Bay continues lurking as well. So no, Greg, I don't find them to be Super Bowl contenders. I didn't even mention Philly there. I think they are contenders with Philly for the division, but that's the top end of the spectrum for them.
Yeah, I don't think that they'll be Super Bowl contenders next season, and for all the reasons you mentioned. But for me, it's not even so much the way they're configured in-house. It's the teams outside of that, not only the division, but in that conference that are ready and are so close themselves that I think the Cowboys have such a longer road to mow than most. And when it starts, when you establish a quarterback, and he has been established as your guy, and he is not under contract, that right there is problematic. Why? Because you have, as you mentioned, so many other guys who have already been paid. So the guy who is the most important as we look at this league on your team is the one that's not under contract. He's the one that's still grinding. He's the one that's still driven the most because he doesn't have that contract. And so what does that afford everyone else? A level of complacency. I don't care what you say, how you say it. There are some guys that can get paid and can continue to play at a high level, and then there are some that you pay and that they don't. And I think the Dallas Cowboys, to your point, have paid so many guys already that they don't have that hunger. They don't have that desire to win a championship as someone who doesn't. And Dak is one that doesn't, and I think that's the problem there.
We will, over the course of the morning, talk about Mike McCarthy and what he did say about Dak Prescott. But one thing I thought interesting in that press conference, Mike McCarthy said, yes, I want to win titles, but just keep in mind, everyone, let's trust the process. So he knows that this is going to be a process. If you don't think they're Super Bowl contenders now, how far off are they, or is that going to depend on when they do, in fact, pay Dak?
Well, listen, I think they're going to pay Dak this offseason, and I didn't love that quote from McCarthy, because while I don't think they're Super Bowl contenders, he certainly should, and they are not the New York Giants hiring Joe Judge, the Washington with a second-year quarterback. They are not a team that, the way they have spent their money and the way Jerry Jones looks at it, that they should be far off. I think they're far off because I wouldn't have paid some of the guys they've paid. I wouldn't try to have the highest paid offensive line in the history of pro football. I think a bad offensive line can kill you, but I think once you get an above average offensive line, the rest of it in today's game where you're not going to run the ball 35, 40 times is kind of unnecessary spending. I wouldn't have given DeMarcus Lawrence the biggest contract in the history of the franchise. But Jerry Jones, the man who picked Mike McCarthy, also picked those players and paid those players. He obviously does not think this is a long process. He fired his adopted son, Jason Garrett, or let his contract expire because they didn't get to the level he thinks they should get to, which is compete for a Super Bowl. So I don't know that I'm buying from McCarthy that this is supposed to be a long, drawn-out process. When a man who hires you who's closer to 80 than to 70 and is obsessed with winning the way Jerry Jones is, he expects the Cowboys next year to win 12 games, win the division, be in contention for a bye, and to make their first conference championship game at a minimum in a quarter century. I just don't see it happening, but I also didn't see the Cowboys making the playoffs this year. Jerry had them in the Super Bowl this year as well. That's the level of expectation from ownership.
I don't think they're far off. I really don't. And I think when Mike McCarthy was talking about the process, I think he was talking about a culmination of all things considering contracts as well. And when you look at their contract situations, there are a lot of guys, once Dak Prescott gets paid, they're going to have to consider reconstructing their contract, their deals. And mind you, one of the reasons that Dak Prescott had so much success was because of a guy on the outside in the perimeter that is not, he doesn't have a contract either.
Correct.
Amari Cooper. So you got two of your premier guys on offense on the same side of the ball that are going to require a healthy amount of money, and some guys are going to be feeling a little sour about it.
You just look at the guys they've paid. 4 offensive linemen, a running back, an inside linebacker, and Jalen Smith. And I understand the offensive linemen obviously help the quarterback as well. But none of them are edge guys. None of them are pass-catching guys. None of them are guys that stop the opposing team's pass catcher. The only guy that impacts the passing game one way or another directly that they've paid is DeMarcus Lawrence, and I think they paid him too much. They paid him like he's at the top of the league pass rusher when he's a very good but not great pass rusher. It just feels like this team has been built anachronistically, and I wonder how Mike McCarthy deals with that, especially because they're about to make Dak Prescott maybe the highest paid player in NFL history. How do you deal with that factor as well?
On to Tom Brady now, where up until now the question was if and not where he would play next season. At age 42, Brady has definitely slowed down a bit the last couple of years. But when you've earned the right to be called the GOAT, you've seemingly also earned the right to decide when you're done. And as we learned yesterday, Brady isn't done. He posted to Instagram, "In both life and football, Failure is inevitable. You don't always win. You can, however, learn from that failure, pick yourself up with great enthusiasm, and place yourself in the arena again. And that's right where you will find me, because I know I still have more to prove. Greg Jennings, what does Tom Brady have left to prove after everything he already has?
Well, statistically, he has nothing left to prove. He's done it all. But this is what makes him special. This is what has allowed him to stay at the pinnacle and be one of the greatest to ever play sports, like across any arena, across any platform, because he understands how to reboot and how to reset and how to manipulate himself to believing this. I have more to prove. Yes, did he have a declining year? Of course. And I know my counterpart over here is going to let us know all about it. But his I have more to prove is more than just statistically. It's about wins for him. He doesn't grade himself on how well he performed and how many numbers he put up personally. That's not what Tom Brady gets caught up. He wants to win, period. It's all about winning. When he doesn't win, or when he doesn't get to where they feel or he feels that they should be as an organization, it's a loss. And when you play within an organization that is championship or bust, something that he was able to establish early on in his career, this is your mentality. And this is what makes you great. So yes, to himself, and that's all that matters, he does still have something to prove.
So where you are incorrect is that...
Let me tell you what
is that I don't care what he did this past year on this question. You can't go backwards in legacy in my eyes. There's no athlete. It's not fair to say had he retired a year ago, he would be here, but because he kept playing, he went down. No, he, even playing poorly this year, enhanced his legacy. You know why? Because he still was the best 42-year-old quarterback we've ever seen. It's just it's a very short list, and most of them were terrible as opposed to just below average. But I want to talk about this year because Brady, you're right that maybe he believes he has something left to prove. But if he does, he's the only person in the world who believes it. He's got nothing left to prove.
Absolutely.
Brady, if there were any doubts remaining about who the greatest quarterback of all time is, he removed them 4 years ago. 2016 Super Bowl, Atlanta Falcons, 28-3. Guys, I got it, and most impressive about it, the players on his team believed it, and the Falcons were worried about it. That gave him his 5th championship. That passed him on Montana on the count the rings argument. It also was a no questions asked Tom Brady-led Super Bowl. That was not a great Belichick defense. That was not a brilliant game plan. That was we are getting our heads handed to us, but my hand will stay calm. I won't be shaky. Get on my back, and I will take us to victory. Since that moment, he's won a league MVP, and they won another Super Bowl. So there is nothing left for him to prove whatsoever. Go ahead, Jenna.
Can I disagree with you just for a second? What's the one thing he's wanted to do that no one else has ever done? He wants to play till age 45. What's the one thing no one else seems to think he can do? Win without Bill Belichick. What's the other thing? Win outside of New England. I think aside from the stats and the wins, he's now at a different place in his career where it's time for him to prove that he can do this, but in his own, without any competition. It's him and him alone.
Okay, but then we are asking, then he has something to prove again. The age 45 is something he set in his own brain. That was no one else's standard. And to do it without Belichick is so unfair. Because how many championships Terry Bradshaw win without Chuck Noll? How many Bart Starr win without Vince Lombardi? How many? And I know Marino never won a championship, but Marino was with Shula the whole time. Troy Aikman was with Jimmy Johnson, and then Barry Switzer last year, but that was Jimmy's team. These great quarterbacks are hand in hand. John Elway never won a Super Bowl till Mike Shanahan got there. They are Joe Montana with Bill Walsh. They are hand in hand with great coaches. So this idea that Brady would be an outlier because he's been teamed with a great coach forever, it's quite the opposite. It's very rare to cross sports for a moment. You have LeBron, a guy who can go to the finals with David Black, can go to the finals with Mike Brown, can go to the finals with Eric Spoelstra, can go to the finals with Ty Lue, and is about to go to the finals with Frank Vogel. More often, it's Michael Jordan is amazing. And he had Phil Jackson alongside him the whole way. Same with Kobe and Shaq or Kobe and Powell. Phil Jackson alongside him the whole way. Duncan and Popovich. So I don't look at, for Brady, Belichick as an asterisk. I look at, and people think I'm an anti-Tom Brady guy. I'm anti-Tom Brady in 2019. Tom Brady from 2001 to 2019, it's the greatest run I've ever seen from a football player ever. So I don't think, Greg, he's got a damn thing left to prove to anyone but himself because he's tricked himself into believing it.
I'm with you there. And Jenna, you bring up a couple really good points. However, I just don't think, and this is what you were getting at, that he really cares about winning without Bill Belichick. Because it's solely about winning. When you look at even entering into last season and all the rifts that we kind of saw going into, or I'm sorry, 2 years ago, all the rifts that we kind of saw, and the one thing that they said both, once they got in-house, there's one common goal.
Sure.
Win.
Yep.
There's one shared vision, shared goal, and that is winning. So I don't care what agenda Belichick may have. I know who he is when he walks in this building. I don't care what agenda Brady may have outside of this building. I know what he's going to put forth and the effort he's going to give us when he steps on that field. That's all that matters.
Tom Brady turns 43 when? In August?
Yeah.
The one thing he's had this year that he hasn't really had in years past are doubters and naysayers about him and his ability to continue playing. I just think he wants to show people he can still do it.
Oh, I think he wants to.
This year.
I just
With or without Bill Belichick.
I just think it would be, I just want to establish this now. If he goes somewhere else and fails, it is not a failure. It is someone who could have, he was so ahead of the game for everyone, from everyone else, and he just kept running it back because he wanted to. And it should not lessen what he's already accomplished. You should never go backwards by continuing to play as far as you would have been better off quitting. Right. Continuing to put yourself, to quote, Teddy Roosevelt, make yourself the man in the arena, that is honorable, even if you end up failing in that arena as they did this year. And so I truly feel that way, and I hate the fact that people think I dislike the guy. I don't dislike the guy. I was just right that he's not good anymore.
Andy Dalton in the news this morning. Oh,
Andy
but why,
Dalton.
Jenna? Why are we talking Andy Dalton? Well, the Bengals are probably locked in on drafting LSU quarterback Joe Burrow with the first pick in the draft, which makes 32-year-old Andy Dalton, who's never won a playoff game, odd man out. Well, Peter King has a solution, saying, quote, I think Bill Belichick would really like to work with Andy Dalton. Nick, do you think Belichick could sell the New England Patriots fans on a guy like Andy Dalton?
First of all, I want to say this. I like where Peter King's head's at.
Which is?
That he thinks Brady's leaving.
Right.
And talking about guys who could be potential replacements. Now, Dalton wouldn't be at the top of my list, but I understand it. Established pro, wouldn't be very expensive. You feel you could moderate his turnovers, and there's only one job left, which means Josh McDaniels might still be there next year. What would he look like in the Josh McDaniels offense, and a smart player who could ostensibly pick it up quickly? Now, to answer your question, could he sell the fans on Dalton? Don't matter because he wouldn't try. Bill Belichick is the only coach in the league that could have an icon move on. And when he's asked about his replacement, he's like, well, we brought in a lot of players this offseason. Devin McCourty had to be replaced. He was a great player with this franchise. Whatever he would say.
That's a great...
Whatever it was you said to
whatever, he absolutely would not try to sell the fans on Dalton. And as much as Patriot fans adore Tom Brady, their second favorite person in their sports life is Bill Belichick. And he has earned every benefit of the doubt, every modicum of trust from fans. Now, maybe not from the NFL league office as far as following the rules, but as far as fans, he has earned the benefit of the doubt. Guys, I'm going to put us in a position to continue to contend, to win our division, and compete for championships. And so he will mute the noise immediately, and they won't have to deal with such noise. So whether it's Dalton, I think, and people would have a adverse reaction to this, I think Marcus Mariota is a very real possibility. Cheap, mobile, doesn't turn the ball over. We saw him have one really good year in year two, and then something happened to him over the last few years. He never got close back to it. Those are the Teddy Bridgewater is a possibility. Those are the types of names the Patriots would be replacing Brady with, because I don't think they're going to just hand the car keys to Jared Stidham. But whomever it is, Belichick ain't going to do some big sales job, because that's not who he is.
Yeah, for me, when I look at Andy Dalton, I just don't think this is he has enough around him, even if this were the move they make. When you look at
or don't think
I don't think
he has enough around him. Doesn't have an
because when you look at his resume, his success solely depends on having a guy on the perimeter that can make plays for him. AJ Green has been in and out of the lineup, and where has Andy Dalton been? Nowhere to be found.
Yep.
Nowhere to be found. If you go and insert him into this New England Patriots offense, who is he throwing the ball to? He doesn't have that guy that can really alleviate some of that pressure. And so I don't like that. And to your point, Belichick wouldn't have to sell anything. He can go in there with a no-name quarterback, and everyone will be sold on the fact that, okay, this is our guy, because it's Bill Belichick, because his plug-and-play mentality, his culture that he's already established of, I will go and find the best player that fits, not so much the best player statistically in the pop and the wow factor, the best player that fits what it is I want to get done. And in my opinion, that is Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater, he can run, he's mobile, and he can throw the ball accurately, and he understands a grand scheme offense that you can throw at him. He's done it in Minnesota when he was a rookie.
In New Orleans.
In New Orleans
Yep.
Now, filling in for Drew Brees with Sean Payton at the helm.
And what Bridgewater and Mariota have in common is they don't turn the ball over. They're not going to be wowed by their arms. They don't turn the ball over. Dalton turns it over a little bit more than them, but he's not a super heavy turnover guy. Any of these, well, maybe not Mariota, but Bridgewater or Dalton, I do think would be, even at the same price, a slight upgrade, Dalton a slight upgrade, and Bridgewater a significant upgrade over whatever Tom Brady's coming back as next season. Especially when you incorporate the fact that Brady is reportedly going to want $25 to $30 million, which I understand why he would want it, but Belichick does not pay based on past performance. So I think that the issue for the Patriots fans they need to understand is, with or without Brady, there is this narrative, oh, well, they're going to reload on the offensive side of the ball this offseason. My question to you would be how? They went over a decade without spending a first-round pick on a skill position offensive player. And then they did it in back-to-back drafts. Sony Michel, N'Keal Harry. They then spent a second-round pick on Mohamed Sanu. Do you really think the Patriots are going to go 3 drafts in a row, in addition to having just spent their second-round pick for this upcoming year on a wide receiver, on a skill position guy? Because I don't. You think they're going to be big spenders in the free agency in the offseason? They never have been. So I think they will tinker. I think they will address the tight end position. But the idea that the Patriots are going to come back next year with Amari Cooper in the fold, or one of those Alabama wide receivers who they draft in the early 20s, all of our history says they are not going to go that route. So whomever the quarterback is, they might have slightly improved weapons of this year, but not drastically so.
Let's talk back Cowboys again. The expectations nothing short of Lombardi-esque for this team with that roster, a top 10 defense and an offense that led the league in yards. And new coach Mike McCarthy knows that it all starts with quarterback Dak Prescott.
I'm excited about the opportunity to work with Dak. I think what he's done so far is very impressive. I think like a lot of us in the league, you watch people from afar, but when you have a chance to watch a player live, and I can recall his rookie year when we played him there in Green Bay. So I've always been impressed with him. You're going to be able to run the whole offense and then some. So, and I think he has an incredible foundation to build off of, and our offensive system will be built around making the quarterback successful. That's the way I've learned it, and it's the way I believe you play offense. So we have a great one there to work with.
It's about as high as you can get with praise for your quarterback. What do you make of what McCarthy had to say about Dak Prescott, Greg?
I think it's all true. When we look at Dak Prescott and we look at the stride that he made this season, it was huge. It was huge, and a large part of that we have to give credit to Kellen Moore. because we saw him take a huge step from a confidence standpoint and his ability to believe and trust in what he was being told, in the plays that he was being given, and that translate to great execution on the football field. Now, with Mike McCarthy, he can advance that. We're talking about a Dak Prescott, and I get it. The hit on him coming into this season was his inability to be accurate. He was accurate this year. He threw the ball with confidence, he threw the ball with velocity, and he threw it with conviction. All things that you need to do as a quarterback that will help your accuracy. He did those things. He threw for almost 5,000 yards this year with a team that we thought would be a heavy run team.
Right.
It was heavy reliant on his arm and his ability to make plays. This is not going to be something that they take away from Dak Prescott. It's going to be something that they continue to build on. And with Mike McCarthy, we saw what he did with Aaron Rodgers. We saw who he was with Brett Favre. He's not going to stop them from being who they are. He's only going to try to enhance them. And adding Ezekiel Elliott in the passing game and sprinkling in a tight end that is not named
Jason
Witten is going to do nothing but help Dak Prescott progress and do even more this year.
All right, so all that very well might be the case. None of it was my takeaway from that. And it's just, I was maybe thinking about it in a slightly different way, which is, once again, you have someone in Cowboys management acting as Dak Prescott's de facto agent. Did I miss it? Have they re-signed him yet, Jenna?
Not yet.
He technically is an unrestricted free agent. Every time one of these guys talks, Dak's got to just be hearing the old cartoon cash register sound in his head. Like, okay, there's another $3 million. There's another $3 million. Because you already knew Jerry, his comments on you. Steven very recently came out totally unnecessarily and basically said, any of our failures this season, not on the quarterback. He's exceeded even our expectations. All right, awesome. And now a new head coach, who I understand that's a tricky spot because Dak almost assuredly is going to be there. And you don't want publicly to cut his legs out from under him and say, well, whomever our quarterback is. But what you can't do when Dak Prescott is going to come to the table here in a few weeks, or his agent is, and going to say, 4 years, $140 million, which would make him the highest paid player in the history of football, that would tie Russell Wilson. That's what Russell has, 4 for 140 with 107 guaranteed. That is where Dak is going to start his negotiation.
And you think all this is hurting him?
I don't think it's hurting Dak. I think it's hurting the Cowboys.
Right.
I think that if they wanted to pay him that, they would have already paid him that. But they continue to box themselves in. You now have your new head coach talking about how seemingly one of the reasons he took the job was to coach Dak Prescott. One of the things he's most excited about is coaching Dak Prescott. And you are not going to be in a good position if you pay the league, let me be generous, the league's 9th best quarterback, the most money anyone's ever paid a quarterback. And you are furthering Dak's ability to stay entrenched, to dare you to use the franchise tag, and wait and see what Deshaun Watson gets. Wait and see what Patrick Mahomes gets. Now, I don't think he'll exceed Mahomes, but he could exceed whatever Watson gets, and he will mark it down. He will make more money next year than Goff, than Wentz, than Aaron Rodgers, and probably than Russell Wilson. He will be one of the 3 highest paid players in the history of football, and the Cowboys continue to make that a fait accompli by having everyone sing his praises when they don't have him under contract. I've never been run a business, but I know how this works. You build guys up once they are signed. And in the negotiation process, one of the reasons people typically, tell me if I'm right, Greg, have agents as athletes is because in the negotiating process, they're tearing you down. And you don't want to hear it. You don't want to have to hear your coach and GM say the things you don't do well. Let your agent hear it. But they have to do that because they're trying to nickel and dime you for as cheap of a contract as possible. Cowboys doing the opposite. Cowboys have this pending free agent, and every chance they get, they're talking about how great he is, and every chance that every time that happens, it costs them more money.
You're absolutely right. Typically, how it happens and how it works in negotiation is they're trying to label you and tag you with something that you don't do well so they can negate how much they have to then pay you. The problem here is they're doing the exact opposite to your point. But I don't think it's so much to spike the price on Dak Prescott. I think it's to let him know, look, this is the Dallas Cowboys. You have our backing. We have your back. So you're going to have to come to the table, and we're going to pay you. We did it with Ezekiel Elliott. We said what we weren't going to do, and we exceeded that. Now, they know they're going to have to exceed what they don't want to do. But paying him top dollar and making him the highest paid quarterback in this league, that can't happen.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen, Greg, and they keep telling us it's going to happen.
Meanwhile, as of this morning, they've had themselves a head coach, and they have yet to pay or sign their quarterback. Back here, first things first, we're now joined by Super Bowl champ Chris Canty.
What up, Canty?
What's going on, man?
Brother.
Good morning, Chris
G-Money. How you doing, man? Well, I mean, I'm just trying to keep up with you, man.
No.
Canty's on his
You
way
got
to
the
prom
cashmere
after this.
wool suit on. Yeah, don't act like I don't know what that is. I know. They might not know. I know.
This is not
Just saying.
cashmere.
What can't you hide, Canty?
Can't hide money.
Can't hide.
Can't hide
He's
money.
got a bunch of it.
He got his own. He got his own money.
I don't know.
Come on, Jenna. That's coming to America. Come on,
Coming to
Jenna.
America is what I was about to say. It was one of the best lines from the movie. Time now for our rewarding performance sponsored by Capital One. What's in your wallet, Canty? See how I tied it all back in? Titans will be in Baltimore Saturday to face MVP runaway Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Lamar led the league in touchdown passes. The Ravens led the league in scoring. And yet the Titans aren't necessarily convinced. Tennessee running back Derrick Henry has a simple question. Why not us? Chris Canty, how confident are you in a Ravens win this weekend?
I'm pretty confident because I think the Ravens have the ability to beat you a couple of different ways. We know that they set the team record for rushing this year, but they can also beat you in the passing game. Lamar Jackson, 36 touchdown passes to only 6 interceptions. He's going to be the runaway MVP. So I think one of the things that we were looking for from him coming into year 2 is how he would improve as a passer. And I think we've seen that Lamar Jackson can beat you with his arm as well as his legs. When it comes to the Tennessee Titans, what their game plan has to be is Derrick Henry running the football, touching it 30 to 35 times. If they're not able to feed Derrick Henry for any reason, then they don't have a chance to be able to put up points with this Baltimore Ravens offense. So for me, the complexion of the game is really what it all comes down to, because if the Baltimore Ravens get out to an early lead,
it's over.
It's going to be hard for the Tennessee Titans to stay with that run game, and you're forced to rely on Ryan Tannehill to be a volume passer, and I don't think that's what Mike Vrabel wants from his team.
I agree 100%. You're talking about two teams that both want to be physical. One, I think, is more physical than the other, and that being the Baltimore Ravens, because they have the better rush defense. They have the better offensive line up front. Now, you can say Derrick Henry might edge out
Derrick Henry's the
Ingram.
best running back.
Yes.
But the Ravens probably have the
running
better game.
Exactly. And so when I look at what both teams have to defend, who am I scared of most? I'm scared of that Baltimore offense more than I am the Titans offense. Looking at the Titans defense, they better be alignment, assignment, and technique sound. Because if you don't contain not only Mark Ingram, but the guy who you talked about being the runaway MVP in Lamar Jackson, you have absolutely no chance of beating this team. And then on top of that, we talked about all offseason. I'll just talk about myself. One of the things I wanted to see him do, throw the ball better. And he's done it. He's thrown it with confidence. He understands when to throw it. And he has a tight end in Mark Andrews that will get open.
He's got 3 tight ends.
Yes. And that he understands when to throw it, how to throw it. And that all is a testament to their offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, putting them in the best position.
But he threw it against lesser competition.
Well,
and now you're playing a team like the Titans. Can you still be as successful?
The Titans, to me, their real strength is their actual offense, because Tannehill was so good once he came in, and Derrick Henry's been sensational. I don't think the Titans have a great defense. But you're alluding to something I said yesterday, Jenna, which was the way for the Titans to win the game. And I want to address that here, actually, because, man, my experience yesterday was wild. Because I have been one of the most vocal Lamar supporters since he declared for the draft of anybody. I sat right across from Jenna and said, I don't understand why he's not discussed his top 15 pick. I think this guy, I thought it would take longer than it took, but this guy can be a franchise quarterback in this league, and I agree with the whole world. He's clearly the unanimous MVP. What I said yesterday was, and I will say again, as upset as the Lamar hive was at me or remains at me, if you say we are going to try to take a little of everything away from Baltimore, you will take nothing away from them and be trounced. If you say we're going to try to take away the downfield passing and the intermediate passing and still give ourselves a fighting shot against the running game, that is how you get beat 45-6. That is how you get embarrassed. The only hope Tennessee has is to dare Lamar to beat them deep down the field and outside the hashes. I am not saying he can't do it. I'm saying you have no shot if you have any other approach. And now, Lamar, as sensational as he's been, I will say it again, the one spot he has been weakest is passing to receivers. Look at their receiver numbers. Now, you could argue it's because he hasn't had to. You can argue it's because they've been so good running the ball, the tight ends have been so good, all of it. Fine. But if Lamar is effective deep down the field passing the football in these playoffs, the Ravens not only will win the Super Bowl, they will coast to the Super Bowl. The defense, since the addition of Marcus Peters and since Earl Thomas has, I think, fully gotten the system, Wink Martindale's done some of his magic, the defense all of a sudden is top 10 defense. The running game is one of the best in the history of football, and Lamar's as dynamic of a weapon as we've seen in recent times. If he also is a consistent deep passer, you can't beat them. Then they have no weaknesses. By the way, they got the greatest kicker I've ever seen.
Yes.
So the point that I was making yesterday, I will make again, is when you see that he had combined, I think, 250 passing yards against Buffalo and the Niners, which is what you're alluding to, and those were close-ish games. The Niners game really close, Buffalo kind of close. You say, okay, that is how you maybe slow down the number one offense in football, is dedicate all your personnel to the run, and if he's having a good passing game, you're going to lose. But it's the only hope you have. The other hope I think Tennessee has, which is minor, and they can't really affect it, how much rust will Baltimore have early in this football game? Can Tennessee jump out to a lead because Baltimore had the bye and rested guys in Week 17? So the hottest team in football hasn't played their most important players in 3 weeks. Tennessee's only hope is that they're a little rusty. They get out to an early lead. Maybe Lamar goes 3 and out on the first possession. All of a sudden it's 10-0, and now you're playing a Titans brand of football. That is the path to victory. It's a small one, but that's the one that exists for Tennessee.
Yeah, there is a small path to victory for them, and let's not say that the Baltimore Ravens defense is unbeatable, because in the run game, the Baltimore Ravens, even though they're a top 10 group, when you look at yards per carry, they're 21st. So, I mean, you can see that the Baltimore Ravens run defense is in the top 10 because their offense is scoring so many points, and the opposing team has to get away from the run game. They got to throw the football. So if the Tennessee Titans somehow, some way can get an early lead in this game and stay with the run game, then I think they got a shot. Again, if you get Derrick Henry north of 30 carries and you're able to stay with it and you're getting the production, then I think you have a chance to make this a fourth quarter game, and then we'll see what can happen. But the Baltimore Ravens are a team that can blow the doors off you. Yes. I mean, they've got 2 All-Pros in that secondary, so it's going to be hard for Ryan Tannehill and A.J. Brown to get anything going in the passing game. I think it has to be with their defense selling out to hit Lamar Jackson, not necessarily trying to stop the run, but hit Lamar Jackson and talk the Ravens out of a quarterback-led run game, and then on the offensive side of the ball, being able to feed Derrick Henry, because they're 7-0 when Derrick Henry rushes for over 100 yards. We saw that last weekend. So I think if the Tennessee Titans can do both of those things, on offense, run the ball with Derrick Henry, defensively hit Lamar Jackson early and often, I think they got a shot.
That is the only shot that they have. And I'll say this, and I'll let you go, Jenna. They gave up 3 100-yard rushers this year. They lost 2 of those games, the Baltimore Ravens. Nick Chubb and Monser from, I'm sorry, they didn't even lose both of those games.
Because they lost to the Chiefs and the Browns.
Yeah, they lost to the Chiefs. And Joe Mixon from the Bengals. The one game against the 49ers was in a monsoon. So to your Lamar Jackson throwing its combination against the Bills, he kind of had to hand the ball off. You weren't throwing in those conditions. The Titans' only chance is to just rely on Derrick Henry and run him until he has nothing left. That is their only chance, because Ryan Tannehill, as you mentioned, those guys on the perimeter, guarding your guys are better.
It's the Ricky Williams Miami Dolphins playoff game plan from 15 years ago. 42 carries and just see if he can just heat up the clock and win the football game. It's a very, very slight package. They're only package.
Nick, when do you think that happens? Could it be next year? Do you expect McCarthy's Cowboys to be Super Bowl contenders that quickly?
I don't know why they would be. The Cowboys have been, in my mind, truly Super Bowl contenders twice in the last quarter century. One's a team you're familiar with, the team the year after Parcells left, Wade Phillips' first year, 13-3, a truly electric football team that got upset at home by the 07 Giants.
That one still hurts. That one still hurts. I was on that team.
And that team was a real contender.
Yeah, we had 13 Pro Bowlers on that team.
And you had a quarterback that's better than Dak. And you were able to, what you saw that year was the best version of those Dallas Cowboys. The only other year I would argue that they were a Super Bowl contender was the Dez caught it, Dez didn't catch it year where they lost to the Green Bay Packers. That was a 12-4 team in 2014 that lost a heartbreaker to the Green Bay Packers 26-21. Some people would say they were contenders in 2016. I think it's almost impossible to win a Super Bowl with a rookie quarterback. So I think there was maybe a glass ceiling on that team. But this year's team won 8 games. They're going to bring back mostly the same roster. I know they're going to have drastically better coaching. What they need is their star players, their highest paid players to play like it. And I don't know if DeMarcus Lawrence has it in him to be a top 3 pass rusher in football. We've seen it 1 year, and it was a contract year. Zeke is the highest paid running back in the league. This year he's about the 5th or 6th best running back in football. What they paid Zeke to do is what we are seeing Derrick Henry do. Just run over people and then run past them. And they're about to pay Dak like he's the best quarterback in the whole league. He obviously isn't. So for those reasons, I don't think this Cowboys team is a true contender, even with the addition of Mike McCarthy.
Well, I think they're a true contender because they have the talent on this team. I mean, coming into 2019, we said it was one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. And about a month ago, you brought up all the different metrics. I mean, they're a team that has a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. Yep. There are only 4 teams in the NFL that had that. And then in terms of net yard differential, they're second in the NFL. For context, the Baltimore Ravens are first and the San Francisco 49ers are third. Both of those are pretty good teams, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, the Dallas Cowboys have the requisite talent to compete at the highest level. It's just a matter of the missing ingredient, finding somebody that has a path to success for this team. Because Jason Garrett, for all of the positive things that you could say about him, whether it's being a motivator, whether it's play design on the offensive side of the ball, Jason Garrett doesn't have the formula for success to compete for a championship. He hadn't been able to get this team past the divisional round. Mike McCarthy has. He actually won a Super Bowl in AT&T Stadium. He's 4-0 in that stadium, by the way.
Yes,
so there's a lot of good things for Jerry Jones to look at when considering Mike McCarthy, but he's got a 125-77 record as a head coach. So to me, this is a guy that's a proven winner, somebody that's won at the highest levels, and that's somebody that has instant credibility when he walks into that locker room. Now, to me, the only question is not whether or not the head coach knows what he's doing, not whether or not the roster is talented enough. It's whether Jerry Jones can take his hands off it enough and let football people take care of football business. That's the only thing that's yet to be seen because, in my opinion, coming into this year, Jerry Jones undermined Jason Garrett. And when your owner is doing that to your head coach, it makes it hard for the guys in the locker room to trust the messaging coming from the guy on the sideline.
Well, they're not going to even go to the guy on the sideline because they know who's really pulling the strings. But I don't think that they're Super Bowl contenders this year. I don't think that they're far off. I just don't think that they are this year. And it doesn't really have anything to do with them per se. It has everything to do with all the other teams in that conference. Now, that division, I think that they could win that division, but there are so many other teams in that NFC conference that are right there in having success of winning or being Super Bowl contenders.
And don't appear to be a team like New Orleans, to me, is a team that is probably going to be on the downtick. But the other, Seattle is still ascending. San Francisco still ascending. Green Bay should be able to maintain. I think those are the teams you're talking about.
Absolutely. And so when you look at the Dallas Cowboys and how they're configured, do they have the personnel? Yes. Now they have the coach. Can they really put together these guys and keep Amari Cooper, Dak Prescott, all these high-paid guys, I think they got 5 or 6 guys that are $10 million in calorie hit. So cap hit. This going into this season. Can you keep those guys on the field? Can you keep those guys driven to play ball? Like, Dak Prescott has not been paid. So he's going to give you everything he has. Ezekiel Elliott has been paid. He might give you something one week, he might not the next. So when you're looking at the way that they're already constructed, the only guy who's still driven to do what Mike McCarthy wants to do is Dak Prescott. Why? He hasn't been paid.
Well, Dak Prescott's going to get paid, and Ezekiel Elliott is paid. So those two guys are going to be there. Their line, maybe not the greatest in football, is still a good line. They still had the top 10 defense. And now they've got a proven head coach. So explain to me, what am I missing? Why are they so much further off than you think? I don't think Seattle's roster is that much better than Dallas'
Seattle's roster is not better.
So there's a team
Seattle's roster is not
on the uptick.
Right, well, because Seattle's got one of the 3 best players in the league at their quarterback position. And whether you're all in on McCarthy or a little more ambivalent, he ain't Pete Carroll. And what Seattle doesn't have is the frontline players Dallas has. But they have a lot of C+, B-. Their middle class is thriving, if you will. Maybe the only one left. And so Dallas looks the hell of a lot, to continue the analogy, like America. They have a upper crust that is doing great.
And they're just at the bottom.
But they don't have any type of middle class on their team. So the other reason, and I didn't bring this up earlier, but just where my head goes with it is, man, injuries are just luck. There's no team that's immune to it, no team that's extra prone to it. And the Cowboys were far healthier than the average football team typically is. That typically doesn't repeat year over year. They are not a team that is built to sustain the injuries. So if you had a year, and Jason Garrett didn't do a good job, but he's not a total doofus. If you had a year where Dak played the best year of his career, Zeke was not awful. He wasn't elite, but he was not awful. You were healthier than average. You still had Amari. We'll see if they have him next year. Your offensive line was fully intact, all paid, and you went 8-8. Then next year, when you have a couple more of those injuries, if Dak takes a bit of a regression because he's learning a new offense, whatever the reasons are, they got to take 3 steps forward. They're not a step away. They have to go from out of the playoffs, 500 record, to double-digit wins, to winning playoff games, to winning probably at least one road playoff game. That is a lot of steps they have to take to be a Super Bowl contender.
It's a lot of steps they have to take, but it's not outside of the realm of possibility. In the divisional round, we only have one team that was here a year ago, and that's your Kansas City Chiefs. So it's not like we don't see teams that were out come back and be contenders the next season. I feel like the Dallas Cowboys have the talent, and you talked about the depth. Will McClay will continue to draft well down there in Dallas. They've had the groceries. It's just a matter of finding the right cook to put the meal together. I think they finally got the guy in Mike McCarthy that's capable of doing that. It's now about Jerry Jones allowing Mike McCarthy to do that.
All right, here we go. A little in or out. You want to play, Greg?
I do.
Matt Rule was introduced as the Panthers' new head coach yesterday. Rule didn't rule out Cam Newton for next season, saying, quote, "I certainly look forward to working with him." Greg Jennings, you in or out on Cam returning to Pro Bowl form under his new head coach?
I'm in. I'm in because I'm just in with Matt Rule. If you
were inspired by him.
Oh, my gosh. If you listen to his presser, I wanted to come out of my hotel room, and you see I got my Carolina blue on today.
I see that.
I mean, he convinced me. And I like what he said. He said something to this magnitude. He said, in Temple, we ran the power and play action. He said, in Baylor, we were spread. He said, here, I'm not stuck on an offensive system. I want to get my players and revolve what we do around them and what they do best. I love coaches like that. He'll get the most out of Cam Newton if he comes back.
Well, here's the thing, and I heard Matt Rule yesterday in his press conference. I also heard the organization when they said that they want to trade Cam Newton this offseason, and considering he's going into a contract year and he's coming off a Liz Frank surgery, I don't know that Matt Rule is going to have the chance to work with Cam Newton. They gave him a 7-year deal. To me, that would suggest they're going to strip it all the way down to the studs and give him time to rebuild. So I am out on Matt Rule getting Cam Newton back to Pro Bowl form.
And I understand this didn't work out for the Giants, the rebuild and contend at the same time. I do think they will take a long view of it, but because Cam only has 1 year left on his contract and you have maybe the best running back in football in Christian McCaffrey, and you know how long that lifespan is going to be with him at the top of the league, I think they'll keep Cam this year, and I think Cam will be sensational. Cam was playing the best football of his career until T.J. Watt hit him. And then that ended 2 seasons ago, and then this past season ended before it even started in the preseason game against the Patriots when he got his foot broke. I think Cam, under Matt Rule's tutelage, will have a bounce-back season and a healthy season. I am in.
All right, moving on to Tom Brady. Though his future with the Patriots might be a bit foggy, Brady still has something left in the tank, posting an emotional Instagram thread saying, quote, I still have more to prove. So, Greg, you in or out on Brady still having more to prove?
I'm in, and I'm not in for what most people would think. He doesn't have anything to prove from a statistical standpoint and what he's done and accomplished individually, but to himself. And this is why I love Tom Brady. For him to be able to manipulate himself and reboot every single year and say, look, I still got something to prove. This is what makes him special. This is what separates him from any other athlete who ever graced this earth.
Yeah, to me, he's got nothing to prove. He's all ready to go. But I hear what you're saying, Greg, that internal motivation. He said he wants to play till he's 45 years old. Have to take him at his word. He wants to prove himself right. But in terms of proving anything to anyone else, I don't think he has anything to prove.
If Tom Brady, if there were any questions left about him, he erased them when he won his 5th Super Bowl down 28-3 against Atlanta. Since winning that 5th Super Bowl, he won another league MVP, which gives him 3 of them. Only Peyton Manning's got more. And then won another Super Bowl last year. And while he wasn't great in the Super Bowl, he did lead a 4th quarter comeback on the road against the number one seed in the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs. Tom Brady's got nothing left to prove. I'm out on this. Your legacy cannot go backwards. He is already the greatest quarterback ever, and to some, if such a distinction exists, the greatest football player ever. By the way, I'm in that camp, even if I think in 2019 he's not very good. He's got nothing left to prove, and the idea that he needs to go do it without Belichick, what did Montana do without Walsh? What did Bradshaw do without Knoll? The great quarterbacks are almost always tied to a great coach, especially if they have long-term success. So I'm out.
All right, well, and with Brady's future with the Patriots up in the air, Peter King has a possible replacement for him, saying, quote, I think Bill Belichick would really like to work with Andy Dalton. Greg, you in or out on Dalton being a better option than Brady for the Patriots next season?
I'm out. I don't like the Andy Dalton pick simply because Andy Dalton has only had success when he's had a very highly successful position guy in A.J. Green, and that's not what the Patriots will provide him, so I don't like that one bit.
I echo everything you said. I'm out on Andy Dalton, giving the Pats a better chance. Andy Dalton has proven to me that he's just good enough to get his coach fired. and so I got to be out on Andy Dalton. I'm completely out.
Despite everything I just said about how much I adore and respect Tom Brady.
Oh, here we go.
In 2020, Andy Dalton, at what would be a third of the price, but the same level of production, of course, would be a better option. Like, Andy Dalton is going to give you the same things.
So is this just solely about the money?
You okay, Kenny?
Man, I can't.
It's about the fact that I don't think a 43-year-old Tom Brady is better than a 33-year-old Andy Dalton.
I can't honor that, Nick.
Yeah, you're talking crazy right now.
I think it'll be very interesting wherever Brady plays next year, if it's with the Patriots or not, wherever Dalton plays next year, because I believe he'll be a starting quarterback somewhere. We'll see who has better numbers.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, I'll place a wager large enough to buy that fancy suit you got that next year you're going to look at them and say, oh, those numbers are almost identical, but Dalton's going to be about a third of the price.
Well, just because you have better numbers doesn't mean you're a better player. You're having a better season.
Come on now. You already had.
All right, well, let this conversation lead into the commercial break. Drawing a blank. With Tom Brady's future with the Patriots up in the air, Peter King has a possible replacement, saying, quote, I think Bill Belichick would really like to work with Andy Dalton.
Ooh.
But Greg Jennings, the best option to replace Brady would be blank.
I had one answer down here. I crossed it out, and I filled it in with Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater. I like Teddy Bridgewater. He can throw the football. He can provide you everything in your offensive playbook. And he's a mobile quarterback that can get outside the pocket. He doesn't really turn the ball over. That's what Bill Belichick needs to go and get.
I really like Teddy Bridgewater, too, but that's why I think he probably stays in New Orleans, because as much as we're talking about Tom Brady is done, Drew Brees is even more done. But if Tom Brady moves on from the Pats or the Pats move on from him, Ryan Tannehill has an option. The quarterback that had the best passer rating in the regular season. He's got the most yards per completion, most yards per attempt. Ryan Tannehill can play a style that will complement what Bill Belichick will have to have this Patriots team do in the foreseeable future, which is be led by their defense and their run game. Ryan Tannehill, that's what they've done in Tennessee. Why not have him as an option? He's a free agent.
I got to start turning my answers over. Greg cheating off me. Teddy Bridgewater is a great answer and is the correct answer, my friend. Teddy Bridgewater, he doesn't turn the ball over. He's not going to be expensive. We saw him go 5-0 this year with New Orleans. And I think Marcus Mariota is a bit of a dark horse, but because he also doesn't turn the ball over and he would be very cheap. But Teddy Bridgewater, I feel, is the correct answer, my friend.
All right, moving on. During Mike McCarthy's Cowboys intro yesterday, the new head coach mentioned building around Dak Prescott, but also said to make a quarterback successful, you need a good run game. So, Greg, the player that McCarthy should lean on most is blank.
Dak Prescott. I've been around Mike McCarthy, and I've been around him, and we had a Ryan Grant. He's nowhere near Ezekiel Elliott.
Zeke.
But we leaned heavily on the arm of Aaron Rodgers, because that's what Mike McCarthy does. He said it in his press conference. I like my offensive scheme is revolving around the play of our quarterback. That's what it's going to be.
For me, it's got to be Ezekiel Elliott, and I know Mike McCarthy has got to get the best out of Dak Prescott, but in order for this team to be at their best, it's got to start with the run game. That's how they were built. This past year was the first year in the Dak Prescott, Zeke Elliott era of Cowboy football when they didn't win time of possession. They got to get back to that. Ezekiel Elliott helps you do that.
Jason Witten. No, I'm just playing. Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott's the right answer. 4 of their 6 highest paid guys are offensive linemen. One of the other top 6 is Ezekiel Elliott, and then DeMarcus Lawrence mixed in there. They have paid this team like they are going to be a power running team. This year, since Dak and Zeke have been there, their lowest time of possession, Zeke's least effective year, and it coincided with their fewest wins. For all those reasons, I think you get back to that and have Dak be more of a complementary piece rather than the starring piece. Ezekiel Elliott is my answer. Can't eat.
He's about to be the highest paid.
Yeah, and it's going to be a massive mistake.
Russell Wilson is hoping to get his first career win at Lambeau Sunday on Fox. There is no doubt that Seattle's road to the Super Bowl is an uphill battle. So, Greg, your dark horse to win Super Bowl 54 is blank.
The Minnesota Vikings. I like the Minnesota Vikings because of one player and one player only, Dalvin Cook.
Okay.
When you look at players who are X factors, Dalvin Cook does everything for this Viking team. He's explosive in the run game. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. When he's on the field, Kirk Cousins is more comfortable. He's more confident, and that offense thrives and it opens up the passing game. I like the Minnesota Vikings as my dark.
You're just taking the Vikings because you're a homer.
No, I'm definitely not a homer.
I'm just joking with you because I'm rolling with the Vikings too.
There we go.
And a lot of it has to do with their head coach, Mike Zimmer. He's a grizzled NFL head coach. He's been around a really long time. You saw the game plan that he put together defensively to slow down that Saints offense, being able to force multiple turnovers on an offense that hadn't turned the ball over more than once in any single game the entire year. So I got to go with the Minnesota Vikings. I think that's the only real team that's on the road this week that has a chance to advance to the big game.
And I'd be shocked if the Vikings won this weekend. I would be surprised, but not shocked if the Titans won. I'm going to say the Titans, because if they get through Baltimore, if Baltimore is rusty or if Lamar just has an off day, I think the Titans can present immense problems for the Kansas City Chiefs. As improved as the Chiefs defense is, that run defense is not that much better, and Derrick Henry is impossible. They already beat Kansas City. So as far as getting to and winning the Super Bowl, it's not just this weekend. You then have to also win next weekend. So for those reasons, I'll say Tennessee, even if there's a reason everyone except Green Bay is more than a touchdown favorite as far as the home teams.
Chris, can you have fun today?
Had a great time.
Love having you here.
And we're going to run it back tomorrow.
I like that. Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern.